All right. I am Angel Givler. I am a teacher in D11, and I am a resident and mom of 2 boys in D20. I work with the state union and the NEA as well. So I am involved locally, statewide, nationwide, all of the things, and education is something that I am extremely passionate about. I decided when I was 5 I was going to be a teacher, and watching people try to harm education really got me fired up, and so I started getting more and more involved.
My name is Brenda Holmes-Stanciu, and I have been a teacher in District 11. This technically is my 30th year of teaching. I did some part-time because the district didn't want to have me do full-time for a while due to my need for my young children. And so because of the years that I had in the district, I was in a safe place that I felt I could speak out for some things that were going on. So I work in District 11, but I live in Manitou D14. And so I started speaking out at district meetings, and knowing that at the stage of my career that I was, that I could, just enjoy having that freedom and not have the worry of my principal coming and knocking on my door. And in Manitou, I was approached by many people who were concerned at some things that were happening within their district. And we formed a group called Stand Up for Manitou. And it was a lot of very smart parents who decided to do a lot of research. And it was a little different focus than what we as a group are needing to do right now as far as Board of Education. But we had the same concerns of teachers being supported, quality staff being retained, making sure that the needs of all were being met. And the nice thing about our story is that we learned to push and push and push, and that push did lead to some much needed changes within the district. So we were able to make at least the start of change. And so many of these other districts are still in that beginning stages, and so we want to support that. So thank you.
So we were asked to talk about the truth about the current state of education and what you need to know to become an educated voter. We have a lot of resources. We've been doing this for a while, and we don't do it in a silo. So we have a lot of people who know a lot of things. So we generally know where to go to get answers when we have questions. So we want to share that knowledge. Okay, so these are just a little bit more about us. I am not going to read this to you, but we will be posting this on the Facebook page so that you can get to it, so you can reference it later. There's also a lot of live links so that where we got information from, you can go and get it yourself. So you can read about us. We're teachers, we're cool. All right, so one of the biggest things that we have to constantly fight is the use of different words that become hot ticket items because they push it out there and it doesn't mean what they say it means, or it means absolutely nothing really. But because people don't really know what it means, they can get really fired up about something that they don't understand when they're only receiving a little bit of information. So some of the things are like SEL, social emotional learning. That just means, we don't let kids get bullied by other kids, and we teach them not to blurt out, to raise their hand. Really important things, that are
incredibly vital now, coming out of COVID, trying to help the students to be meeting their needs that they have. And that's what's so distressing is we've entered a new world this post-COVID. And if we're not meeting their emotional needs, we're seeing the outcomes. The 4th and 5th grade in our school for the last 2 years have definitely been outliers from what we've had in the past. They're acting out at a much higher percentage than they had in the past. So,
yeah. Yes, I teach 5th grade. So this is my 14th year. I have taught in different states, public schools, charter schools, all sorts of different types of communities. And this has by far been my hardest year. And it is not because the kids are academically behind, like, the news shouts about. Sure, they're a little behind, but that's literally what I'm trained in. So I feel fine being able to catch them up. It's the social and emotional needs that are much greater gaps. These kids have literally been living in active trauma for the last several years. And that didn't look the same in all locations. I work in an area that had, essential workers. Their families were working at grocery stores or fast food, or were quickly laid off and couldn't get on food stamps and unemployment for weeks because it was so backed up. Compared to where I live on the north side of town where, that wasn't the case. And luckily I had great neighbors who were able to drop off donations of food, and I took them to the families that I teach. But these kids haven't known stability for several years. So it's been very hard. This has by far been the hardest year. Luckily I do work in a school that is very aware of students' needs, and we work together really well to make sure that they are supportive. We have social workers, we have an MFLAC, we have a counselor. My admin's great and they're all supportive, but that's not the case in a lot of buildings. Critical race theory, CRT, is something that they love to shout about and they keep claiming we're teaching. Literally, we don't teach that. Do I say that Rosa Parks was asked to move because she was a black woman? Yes. That's it. But I did see that was just taken out of the Florida textbooks. They will not refer to her race anymore, so I don't know why they think she was too pretty to sit there.
She was a short woman.
She was too short. So I don't know why she couldn't sit there. So that's interesting because, they're claiming that it makes current white children feel bad about themselves, which is not the case at all. So they shout about that. Moms for Liberty, MFL, is big. It's big here. They show up to our board meetings. They were at our last board meetings. The one said out loud in front of people that she should not have her students take a survey about whether or not they're being abused at home, because how dare we imply that her children are being abused at home. So for me, that says that we probably should check on those children, because as a mother who's safe at home, I am completely okay with my children answering that so that other children
have the opportunity
to say that they're not safe. So it makes me worry about the people who don't want that taken. And this group is not large, but they are loud and everywhere. They just jump around towns and cities. I mean, they came down from Monument to speak at the D11 board meeting. It's not our community. Yeah. And D49, they go to Woodland Park. They are everywhere. And it's not just in Colorado, it is national. So they are someone to watch out for, especially since if people don't know. I mean, Moms for Liberty, in their wording, it makes it sound like they're fighting for education and their students, which is, what we all want. We all want a good education and a safe space, but they have very ulterior motives and they don't put those out there.
And they're well financed. So that's the other.
Yes. Advocate, this is a word that has been used against me. One of the women is now actually on Moms for Liberty and has returned to our district recently, but she says that when I'm fighting for education, that I'm not an advocate. I'm not advocating for anybody, that I'm just indoctrinating, because that's their favorite word to use. But an advocate is just somebody who fights for somebody who might not have a voice. Vouchers are used a lot, and there's a lot of legislation across the nation that doesn't say vouchers, and they will stand up and be like, it's not a voucher. So as soon as they say that, no, it's a voucher. And the goal of vouchers is to privatize education. It is not about giving people choice. It's not about making it more equitable. It is 100% about privatizing education, which means that there would further the gaps in education because they would still have, parents would be expected to pay the difference, and that is harmful to public education and to students. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is obviously another type of indoctrination, according to them. Really, this means that I have books in my classroom where there are characters other than white families with a mom and a dad and 2.5 kids and a dog and a white picket fence, is really what it means. They don't like that. Equity means that everybody gets what they need, not that everybody gets the same thing. And inclusion means that not only do we allow people to be who they are, but we include them and make them feel safe in our classrooms, which I don't know how you can argue about that. But there's those things. And then another term that's important to know is a union versus association. District 11 is lucky and unique. We are the only association in the El Paso County, all entities, including firefighters, that have collective bargaining, which makes us a union. And that is the big difference between a union and an association. We have collective bargaining, which means that the union can go bargain on our behalf. Nowhere else can. So we are trying to help.
Doing the work that Stand Up for Manitou did in D14 and in other locations, people have chatted with us about, well, how come when I am going into a meeting with my administration, I am not allowed to bring another staff member in with me because I am uncomfortable about what's going to be discussed. I want someone there to listen and take notes. If you're part of the association, you don't have that right. And, just on a human-to-human level, that doesn't make sense. It falls into human resources and what the rules are there for different organizations. For us in District 11, it's like, yeah, of course I can have that. And so there's all these of course and what is logical, but unless you have those rules laid out through the bargaining, and of course they're there because there have been problems. A lot of teachers in other districts, when something happens, they're shocked and appalled, and then all of a sudden they're realizing, oh yeah, that would you like to join the association paperwork or email they got in the beginning of the year might have been something to, really pay attention to. Contributing to the union is a financial piece, but it's one of those things that, so many of us in District 11, enough of us, I should say, it has to be a high enough percentage in order for it to stay a union, have said it's important. And that's what maintains it. But that's why a lot of teachers that I have spoken to in the last few years have moved into D11 because they felt like they were protected.
What percentage of teachers are in the union?
That's a very good question.
I don't know what the percentage is, but it has to be a majority in order to achieve collective bargaining. But it doesn't have to be a super majority. I think you just have to, it's like 50, 1, 2, 3%. Yeah. Like, it's not super high.
There's a significant amount of teachers in the union in D11.
There are. And
a lot of it is come and gone depending on where the threat and needs were.
Yes.
People are like, oh, I don't need to. But when something goes wrong, like the teachers I worked with who were young and they honestly didn't feel they had the financial ability to do it, they're the first ones to come and start asking questions of the union when something goes wrong.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I sat at new teacher orientation this year. In D11, the union gets a whole day with the teachers. In other districts, they are told they don't have a union. We're an association, which we need to fix because they do. And if they get enough people signed up, they can have collective bargaining too, which is why they're told they don't have one. But I sat there at new teacher orientation to try to recruit the new teachers to sign up for the union. And we didn't have to say anything. The younger generation that's coming in, I mean, we're watching them unionize Starbucks all over the place, right? They are not going to go to work without a voice. And that's amazing. I have worked in a school district that had collective bargaining, lost it. So then I was without it overnight. Everything went bad. I moved to California where we had a really strong union. And then I came here and I was at a charter without a union. And then I moved into D11 intentionally because I I know how important it is to make sure you have a voice at the table. And there's a lot of places that don't have that. And I was unwilling to work in a district that didn't have one. We do have, other benefits as well. Like our health benefits are better, and it's because we fight hard for them, and we have a voice and a say, and we're asked as union members what we want the union to fight for. I'm getting ready to go to Delegates Assembly next month in Denver, and that's when all of the locals meet in Denver for the state union. And we vote there on like what we want the state to fight for at the legislative sessions. And then last year I went to the national one, and it was the same. We voted on what we wanted the NEA to focus on nationally. So it's not these higher up people who are out of touch with reality that have never been in the classroom. They are active people in the buildings that are voting and saying what we want. So when people are like, oh, but you're union, but the union is us. Like, we are the union. So it's very important to recognize that it is a very not only teacher-friendly organization, but it fights hard for kids. Like I've been at, when it's talking about minutes for kids' contacts and holidays and supplies and finances, like they fight for all of those things to make sure that kids have what they can get. So very important to know the difference. All right, so unfortunately, teachers went from heroes to villains really, really fast. So, we started out like Captain America here, who's being hugged by kids, loved by all. And here's kind of like a short timeline of like how things went down, right? So in 2020, teachers were heroes. Oh my gosh. It's all of the things, like, I can't believe they did this. And then real fast, they were like, I should get paid for doing the teacher's job. Why am I getting a tax credit? They're not even doing anything. Well, most of us were working harder and longer hours than we had ever before. And then, it's teachers are indoctrinating and grooming kids. And now we're banning books, and conversations at schools will only be academic, which is what our district is currently saying, is that if it's not academic, we can't talk to kids about it. So we very quickly went from heroes to villains. So earlier when I was putting pictures on the slides, I was like about to just like Google villains. And then I was like, wait a minute, I was literally villainized by Fox News. So 9 days after I announced my campaign for the D20 school board, national Fox News, not local, like the big guys, put out this lovely article about me, about how I'm a super leftist villain. So I do wear a super leftist villain shirt, and I actually did it very intentionally because they've been calling me an indoctrinator and a groomer. I didn't want them to call me that, right? Those words are terrible things. They mean awful things. Super leftist villain means literally nothing. Call me, whatever. So, they put out this article. I have it linked on the bottom, so you'll be able to get to it if you want to see it. But they quoted me accurately throughout. I'm great. But the people who read Fox News don't typically actually read the article. So anything where I'm being quoted, I definitely said it. It's great. But then, over at the bottom of this one, it says I'm screeching about including gender ideology into 5th grade classes. If you read the article, nowhere in there does it say anything about me teaching gender ideology, because obviously they can't support that. So when they quoted me, they did pull direct quotes, but they weren't bad.
And the only Fox way news that they can.
Right. So they just put the big headlines. It made me sound terrible. Luckily, D11 did get called, and they said that the D11 and McAuliffe are proud to be accepting of all students in their classrooms, which is really all the article says about me, if you read it. Also, which is why I'm wearing my super leftist villain shirt that was made for me. So, because it's not a real word, this is the new textbook definition.
We can all vote, because you can get the new word into the Webster Dictionary.
Yes. This is now the definition. So I was like, I'll just throw out my own picture. So, and then it says in 2024, your vote will decide, which is why we are here. When we talk about the teacher shortage, there's a lot of reasons that have caused the teacher shortage. Burned out. When I say that this has been my hardest year, I mean, it's my hardest year. Like, I am exhausted to my core, and I think that most teachers are. because these kids do need a lot of social emotional support, which is, I mean, kids are draining anyway. So when they're coming with extra stuff, it's hard. Underpaid. I have a TikTok that's one of my most popular that talks about teacher pay in the state of Colorado and how bad it is. It's a whole thing, so I'm not going to deep dive into how underpaid we are, but know that it's bad. There are constant attacks on teachers. If you've been on social media or any news outlet, you can see that, we're horrible people all the time. Politicians love to talk poorly about educators. And manufactured outrage, the list of words and acronyms that I put up earlier is manufactured outrage. It's just getting people right up. Oh, they're teaching SEO. Well, you don't even know what that means. It doesn't matter. It's bad. Okay, well, you're just mad about something that's not real. So it's very good. We're going to talk more about mistrust, but they like to put that teachers are not trustworthy, which is why they call us terrible names. Lack of recognition of education, training, and professionalism. Like in Florida, where they're like, anybody can teach. Okay, yeah, I have 3 degrees in this, but, homegirl that down the street can definitely do it with no education experience. And that even while we are being drained and attacked and underpaid, we're still expected to adhere to the expectations of administration, family, students, BOE, and the general public. So we are one of the few positions where literally everyone thinks that they have a say in how it's run.
I mean, we're professionals, as all of you know. And it's one of those things where you question, okay, if we take any other profession, whether it be a firefighter, someone who's a CPA, someone who's a surgeon, imagine that profession getting this kind of attack all the time. Well, what certifications do you have? And how do we know that you know what you know? I mean, when someone's going in for an operation, do they interrogate the person, all the people involved with that surgery? Or do they have an understanding that this person was hired by this location, so of course they have passed and gone through all of these levels of licensure to have the expertise that they have. So try to think of another profession that is attacked like teachers are routinely. It's not the principals that are being attacked. It's not the administration that it's being attacked. It's the people who have all of these degrees, and because of the gazillion amount of workshops and trainings and everything that we have gone to, we know why the SEL is so important for these kids right now. We know what pieces of the curriculum, I'm not wasting my time on that. That was something that a California group decided they needed to sell to someone. I'm going to focus on the parts of the standards and give them the time in each one that I feel this particular group of students needs. And the only way that type of thing happens is because of all of the training and all of the years that have gone into us working with this age group that we're experts on. So I know so many teachers, the ones that were my mentors or the ones that I have worked with that are like the reason that I want to come to work, as far as feeling like that classroom, those kids are happy. They are having their needs met. Those children are engaged. Those are the teachers saying, I'm counting my years. My husband is begging me to buy years because I am so stressed out. My family knows that I have to leave. I'm looking for a new job. We have teachers in my school right now who are not certified because that's how desperate the districts are. They are still getting certified right now. So these are the teachers that are going to be the higher population in schools. They have no one to look up to. So, where are these pieces going to go? The teachers that have been doing this for so long, who have that strong understanding of the age group, who know how to talk to families, they're the ones saying, I've held on, but now I'm going off the cliff. I'm going to go work at Costco. They are going to appreciate me more. And that's what there's a lovely, another woman who does TikTok videos, and that's what she did. She left teaching. She's working at Costco, and her things they're funny and interesting, but it's also, as a teacher, it's so depressing for her to not have felt supported. Right now with my principal, I have to fight to do the early childhood stuff that I know is so important for these kids. You know, we're putting up pictures on our website right now, and the district website. Come to us, we're the best. But 90% of the pictures are not reading and math. They're all the special things that we have to beg to do. Science Day and things like that, I have to beg because it's not part of the curriculum. Of course it's part of the curriculum. People don't open their science kits. I teach science every day to my class because I teach in a cross-curricular way. But the pictures that you want to bribe other people to come to the school are the fun ones. Why aren't you taking, if the school board wants us to be doing science and math, or reading and math all the time, then we should have reading and math pictures up there all the time. Not just Dr. Seuss Day.
My school, the district shared the video of a student pieing our
Yes,
admin yesterday. Those are my videos. I recorded it. So
Yes.
that's what was shared, which is fun. The kids loved it.
It is absolutely fun, but why are the students engaged then? And I do have them engaged in reading and math, but it's a struggle, and you do it in different ways. But those new teachers don't know how to do that. So we are going to have a whole generation of kids coming through with a huge percentage of them really not loving school. Because they are on page 1, they are on page 2, they are on page 3. Walk down the hallway with where's your bubble? Oh my gosh, I will never say that to my class. We're walking down the hallway. Do it with respect. You know, there's ways of doing it, but the teachers who can model that often are the ones who are getting beaten up by the administrators. But you are welcome to check our data. Our data is there.
Yes. All right, so this information that I'm going to go over now is about voter turnout. So this is the statewide voter turnout for 2021. Pretty sure it's 2023 right now. Yeah. So this is from 2021. So this data looks better. Okay. This is good turnout. 66% across the state. This link will take you to these results. You can click on it. You can find your area. You can zoom in, specific results, voter turnout, everything. The problem is, no, this is from 2022 because we're on an off year now. Okay, so this is from 2022, which has a higher percentage of voter turnout than we're going to see this year. That's just the reality of it for two different reasons. One, we have 2 elections this year, next month, and then in November. We have voter burnout. They're tired of learning about all the people and the things. And then they're off years, which already lowers the voter turnout. So this is decent voter turnout. Now, if we look at voter turnout for 2021, it's going to be a lot different. I pulled specifically Colorado Springs data, but you can look this up anywhere. So compared to 2022, which was an on-year cycle, 66%, these numbers are significantly lower. So the municipal elections, which are the ones that are in April, had a 27% voter turnout. The people that turn out for these elections are typically older people. They just are. They are more involved. They're more knowledgeable. They show up. Okay, so 27%. So next month, if we want change, more than 27% of voters have to show up. And it can't be that 27%. District 20 had a higher percentage of turnout than other districts, but it was still only 41, where Falcon was at 31 and D11 was at 34. So when a board member in D49 is like, the majority voted for me. Okay, so if you got 63%, I don't know.
I wonder.
I know no names. So if that person says, 60% of voters voted for me. Well, no, not 60%. 60% of 31%. That's fifth grade math. It's a little complicated. It's hard. It's one of those things we go over for a while, but a percent of a percent is really, she's looking at like 20% of voters. That is not the majority. The majority did not vote for her. 20% of the registered voters is not the majority. The problem is the majority don't show up. So we have to change that. Do you want to talk about this stuff?
So how can we alert those who are not aware? So that's where this type of meeting works. Sending your friends a link to the Facebook page. Really the best way to do it is having those casual conversations with your friends and saying, I'm not sure if you're aware. And that just happens all the time. I know that some of the teachers that I worked with we live and work in different populations, and that became quite apparent during COVID, and during elections. It was very obvious that our minds are on different sides of things. But as we got to know each other a little bit more, I would be able to have these hard conversations with them, just a little nip at a time, a little dabbling, and say, hey, were you aware? And then she started seeing me at board meetings and watching from home and saying, gosh, that was really, and what did that other lady say? And why did that lady say that? And so you just nip at it. And now she's like, yeah, what can I do? I want to come, So there's hope. And I never would have thought that there was hope that long ago, with someone who was on a different political plane than I was. But I think everyone starts to see the illogical piece of it. When you can hear about it or see a little glimmer of it in the newspaper or in a little article, but when you are watching the person vehemently talk about, whether it be teachers or students in a certain way, then you're like, wait a minute, that's not okay. I know you were telling me about that, but now when I'm watching it, and who is that person, and why are they allowed to do that? So any of those conversations that you can have, and spreading the word.
Yeah. And one thing to point out, about, a lot of people in Colorado Springs in similar communities are like, well, my vote doesn't matter because the other side's the majority. Well, that's not actually looking true anymore. Stephanie Vigil just flipped her House seat. And so there's a lot more, there's been a lot of progress and change. But we have to change that mindset of the people who are used to being in a very small part of the minority group. So we need to make sure that they feel the acceptance. And I know that with a lot of the grassroots groups that are in the county and the state and even nationwide, it has made people feel like there's hope. And we will give you some links to more and list Facebook groups and places and things at the end. But know that they're really good because they really make you feel like you're not in this alone and that you're not crazy. So I would say that that's part of the reason that I've managed to keep going, because I know that. So trusted teachers. They love to shout about how terrible we are, right? But data shows that even with a drop since 2019, we were really high, then it dropped because of COVID. We can see that people still trust educators. So this says that the rating for communities, public schools, is sitting at 54% with a high acceptance rate. Okay, so 54% of people polled believed in public education still. Overall trust and confidence in communities' public school teachers is still sitting at 63%. That is extremely high. The majority of people trust us, even with the constant attacks for the last 2 years on education. teachers are still trusted sources. However, only 37% of people would want their own children to go into education.
Is that from Find Out That Happened?
PPK.
Yeah,
That is, okay.
yeah. So one of the things that I was looking at is there are only 3 professions, 3, that have a higher trusted rating than educators. And I was talking to my boyfriend. I was like, guess what they are. He did not guess. Doctors are up there. He did guess that one. And then the other 2 are military members and scientists. Don't surprise me. I know. I'm surprised that they're still rated so high, considering, I mean, I trust scientists, but, we have learned that not everybody does. So teachers are still in the top 4. So that's great news. Another thing that I learned this week is that even the people who doubt public educators as a whole tend to trust their teachers' educators, right? So we're talking about like when I start having people knock doors for me for my campaign to, use people who are in like where they teach in those areas, because any teacher might not be trustworthy, but my teacher, she's trustworthy because she's different than the others. The others, these made up others who are doing all these terrible things, right? So when people are talking, it's important to remember that even though we loudly hear a lot of things, they are just loud. They're not the majority. The reason they're yelling is because they are not the majority. So they are being loud to try to cover up the actual majority. So there is a link to this at the bottom too. There is hope. People do still trust us. Do you want to talk about this one?
I can start it.
Okay.
I want you to take over.
Okay.
So part of the problem, well, with just social media in general, that was brought up earlier as far as how people read headlines and don't research into articles. So it's just a dabbling in knowledge. And so that leads to the idea of too many false facts being shared very quickly. And so how can we really know what we're reading is correct? And there's a lot of people, sadly, that have too much trust in the media that they're looking at. But there is this wonderful site that will help you to know where your media bias might sit.
Yeah. So on this chart, it shows like who's more in the middle, who's more left, who's more right. The link that I have attached on here is interactive. So when you go to this, it's interactive. So you can click on it, you can type in one that might not be included on here, and it will tell you where they fall on their bias. So if you want some really way left-leaning media, you can find it. If you want some really right-leaning media, you can find it. If you want actual facts, probably go here. And then another thing to really consider is one of the things when I'm doing my research, because I'm going to talk in front of a school board or at the state level or to a legislator or whoever on TikTok, I make sure that I am researching from good sources. So first, something I always consider is like, who profits from the information that's being told, right? So, unfortunately, because of the world we live in, districts have to sell themselves. So even though they are not intentionally going to give you bad information, it might not be holistic, right? The district isn't going to put out the negative aspects of their school district. They are going to highlight the positives. Somebody who is fighting against public schools is only going to pull negative data. They're going to find the one school that has all of the bad things happening in it and be like, look at this example. That's one example.
That's how you got famous.
That's how I got famous. And so, it's good to think about those things. So with the Colorado Education Association and the National Education Association, when they are putting out data, it is going to be in support of education, but not trying to sell something to you, right? So the districts themselves are trying to sell themselves because we live in a choice state. The union wants to know what's actually happening, because if bad things are happening, they want to be able to go in and fix it, right? They're going to fight for that change. So when they put out numbers, they just released the state of education. You can find it on their websites. There's a state one, and then there's a national one as well. And that research is based off of like, okay, what's good, what's bad? What do we need to fix now? What's like holding on okay? Their motives are very different. So those are good sources if I need educational information, because they are pro public education, but not from a sense of having to sell themselves, as a sense of like making it the best that it can be. So that's something that I consider. People always say that like, higher education is this like liberal entity because we're taught to critically analyze the information. So in my PhD, I had to go make sure that my sources were peer reviewed. If it's not peer reviewed, if your peers in the medical, the scientific, the education field are not looking at your data and being like, oh yeah, no, that's good. That's accurate based off of all of this other data we're finding as well. We support it. It's reviewed. Yes, we stand behind you. If your peers are not standing behind you in your education or in your research, like, it's not good sources. And that's normally what's posted about education, about science, about doctors, about, anything, is they pull from these sources that they're like, oh, well, it's from this doctor. Okay, but that doctor wasn't supported by other doctors. Like, that's bad. Like, you want your peers to support you. And if they're not, like, it's a problem. So that's some things that I consider when I am looking for information.
So we talked about many of these things already, but as far as how can you feel empowered? And the idea of talking to your friends, your family, and coworkers, and that's something that's been discussed as the best way to start change happening, because they need to hear it from someone that they trust. Share what you are learning, share those Facebook pages or those pieces of information that you can trust, and encourage them to go out to vote. Or, hey, did you get your mail-in ballot? Let's have a ballot party. Let's all fill in our ballots together. Joining those different organizations that are leading the charge, such as the League of Women Voters, researching the local groups such as Inside Out, Neighbors for Education, which has only been around for just over a year, which is so hard to believe all the good that they are doing. At board meetings, you'll see them red for D11, purple for D49, and now we have another color, blue in, is it D20? So, you get like-minded people together, and great things can happen. You can write to your board members very easily, and it's really fun when you can click on it and put a note in there saying nicely you expect a reply, because you're forcing them to do what they promised they would do, and it's nice to get things in writing, get their comments in writing, and it can be used for good or otherwise. Show up at other districts' board meetings to show support, because they need us there. And quite honestly, if we fill their time, the time slots, then the people who are loud and coming from all other different areas with an agenda you might not agree with, we take time away from them if we fill up the docket. And you can speak at board meetings. I've talked to a whole bunch of, and they're like, oh no. I was like, you just don't look up. You just don't look up. You just have it. You just read. You just get, and you go. You just don't look up. You can, you come up with your whatever, but you really, really can do it. Okay, and again, we want to fill it up with the ideas that you have in your head rather than giving people the opportunity, you know. And then who knows? You can be moving up the chain, you know, as we see Angel doing here, you know, reaching out to potentially be a board member herself.
And just because I look confident and comfortable at those podiums is not true. I have a full-blown panic attack every time beforehand, but I know what I'm saying is important, and I know that it needs to be heard. So I go up there and I shake the whole time, but apparently I'm very good at hiding it. But I am very uncomfortable doing it. Yesterday, I've been like working on like speaking in front of adults for the last probably 10, 12 years, like, and with a microphone. Like in front of adults is already hard for me, and then add a microphone and it just gets way harder.
And these are people who do presentations all the time to our class.
Yeah.
You know, so people who don't do that, and then there's the other layers, so.
Yeah, and so, you know, I don't look down, I tend to look up, but I tend to find the one good board member, the one that I know actually cares about children and education, and I'm just like hyper-focused. I'm speaking to you about them. And so that really helps me. And then, like, I testify at the state legislature, but I get to do that on Zoom most of the time, which is really nice. Like, there's some benefits of COVID. But I did not know that my face was on a giant TV in the room the first time I did it. And the very first time I testified in front of the legislation, I had my speech ready. I had my sources. I had my quotes. I was ready. And I was actually talking about how bad vouchers are for education. And I quoted Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 because that was what ended segregation in schools. But that is also where like private and charter schools came out of, because they didn't have to follow the same rules. So they could continue to keep students segregated. So I was pointing that out. And that's literally what I said. And one of the legislators yelled over the top of me, which they're not supposed to do when you have your time. Nobody else is allowed to speak. And I panicked. I was like, there wasn't information in the reading about this happening. Like, I just like stopped. And then like I tried to speak again. And so he started yelling over me again. And so then the chair had to stop him. And she was like, we're going to recess. And you could see him flailing his arms, and he was like, this is absurd. And I was like, okay. So I'm like, I guess I just sit here. And I know I was smirking because, if they're mad, that you said the right thing, right? Because they know, like, oh, God, they're going to make me look bad. I have to stop them. And so, then I was able to speak again, and when we came back from the recess, the chair, she was like, can you just not call people names? And I was like, I didn't call anybody racist. Like, I was just citing this. And so then I recited it. And I was like, and I have links to the data if you would like it. Nobody wanted my links later. I don't know why. And I kept reading. So one thing is you can't let them stop you. It's hard. I was pretty sure I was going to throw up, but I kept going. And it was important. It needed to be heard because a lot of people don't realize that happened in 1954 because it's not covered in our textbooks. We don't learn that private schools emerge right after that in a hopes to keep children segregated. Like, I didn't know that until I started doing the research. So don't let them silence you in whatever way. Use whatever platform you're comfortable with or you can become comfortable with. So I actually started my TikTok when I was a fellow with the CEA Ambassador Fellowship last school year. And I was just like, I want people to have a better understanding of what it's actually like in education. Like, I don't want this like fluff story, but I also don't want the other side who's saying all these terrible things about us to be the people who are heard. I want to tell the public what it's actually like, what's really happening and going on. What are teachers really like? And it blew up. It was way more popular than I ever realized it would be. And it gave me a platform. And TikTok is somewhere where I feel comfortable because I'm just talking to myself for 3 minutes. And
she's famous.
Post.
I want her autograph.
So, I mean, it just, even if you're not super confident and comfortable, just fake it. Because you'll get there, or you'll get comfortable faking it up there. Whatever works.
But you'll be real.
You'll be real. Yeah, nobody is going to doubt you when I'm real in my videos and honest, and that gets me more attention than when I'm just stating facts or being a robot with data and numbers. It's another thing I almost forgot to mention, that with the CEA, one of the things we're taught is, like, when we talk to legislators or people, don't just state the data. They can read the data. They can research. They can pull up the facts. They know. They don't care. But when you go and you tell your real lived experience as a mother, as a parent, as a grandparent raising kids, as a teacher, an admin, a community member who is impacted by education, those stories that are real and personal and yours, they can't take away from you. And those are the ones that they need to hear. The facts they can research. They were probably given a sheet that they didn't read. They don't care about those stories. Mm-hmm. Tell your real stories.
Okay.
And then on our last slide, I'm adding to it because we decided it was like at the last minute. So there are a lot of helpful websites. We'll keep adding to this, but this first one is to get on the legislators' website. This tells you what bills are coming up, when they're coming up, when they have public comment. It allows you to sign up for public comment. You can sign up in person. You can sign up on Zoom. You can write a letter to the legislator, and then it becomes part of the documents. The next one is for the state board of education. Not all states have a state board of education. It's ran differently in different states, so not everybody knows that ours is a volunteer position that's voted on, and it is a board rather than like some states have just a state superintendent that runs the education department. The Freedom from Religion Foundation is one that we have to call on regularly when they start preaching or start trying to make rules based off of their specific religion. Even though I know in my classroom alone, I have 7 different religions. So why does my religion become more important than those other kids? So, and if you are interested, Rob Rogers, who is a community member here, is speaking today at the Freedom from Religion Foundation about the 7 mountain mandates, and how that's impacting Colorado Springs specifically as the epicenter, but also nationwide. Neighbors for Education, we mentioned before, and these are the links to their actual websites, but all of these also have Facebook groups that keep you really well informed. Yeah. There's a Facebook group called the Legislation Tracker, and it's like highlighted bills that impact, a lot of them are about education, but there's other bills on there too that they're like, that you want to know that are coming up. So I check all of these things so that as an educator, as a mom, I can pop on and speak when they need to. But we mentioned Inside Out, and
we will be adding to this.
We'll be
There's
adding
so many that we can.
What is Inside Out?
It's an organization in Colorado Springs that's supporting LGBTQ
plus youth.
Yeah,
They specifically support the youth.
so focused on teens.
Yeah. Yep. So there will be a lot more. Luckily, this is
Active.
it is active, so we will add to it. It will be posted in the sweep group as well as this event specifically, so that it is easy to find, and then we will add to it.
And Neighbors for Ed is continuously, they're still working on it too. So.
Yes. Citizens Project is going to go up there. There's a lot. We have a lot of groups that are really good. And then we'll post some Facebook groups too, because then those help you feel less alone.
Yeah, and a lot of us just don't know all the awesome things the other groups are doing,
That's right.
so that we can show up for each other.
Yeah.
So.
I think that's all we have.